Welcome. Let's settle into a quieter space tonight. This one requires a deep breath.
It really does.
We're not in a race here. This is a slow, almost reverent exploration. The material we've been sitting with, it touches on, well, maybe the most profound and unsettling thing a person can face. The numinous.
That word numinous, it points to something overwhelming. A sense of awe, of mystery, of the holy. But the sources we're looking at tonight, they're not coming from the usual places.
No, not at all.
They're not traditional religious texts. They are.
Well, they're radical. Some of them take a sledgehammer to the entire structure we use to search for meaning.
They really do. These voices, the raw account from Black Butterfly, the uncompromising stuff from Krishnamurti, they don't just ask you to look for God. They ask you to question the very thing, the very identity that's doing the looking in the first place.
Exactly. They critique the whole thing, the entire edifice of organized spirituality, self-help, and frankly, the very idea that there is a self to improve or to save.
So our mission tonight, it's not to give you a shortcut to get there. No, because they would say any goal you set is guaranteed to fail.
Right. Our mission is, it's a shortcut to understanding why. Why the pursuit itself, the constant striving, the need to be better, is just. It's fundamentally flawed.
It's structurally flawed.
We're going to try and describe something that can't be described. We're drawing from people who testify, I found it, and the eye that was looking was just utterly destroyed in that moment.
Yeah.
We're trying to extract the meaning of this non-conceptual, irreversible state.
And we're focusing on that feeling, the pure, annihilating awe and love that's left over when the conventional identity just dissolves.
We want you, the listener, to maybe get a sense of what awaits when the search finally ends, because the seeker is gone. Let's start with the feeling itself, because, before we get into the philosophy or the terrifying physical side of it, we have to try and grasp the sheer intensity.
Yes.
When that identity, the one that's always looking, finally falls away, the descriptions are they're almost too much for language.
They are. It's often described as this profound, nonverbal reality. Something so totalizing that it just changes your relationship with everything, instantly.
One of the sources, Michael Clever's account, Black Butterfly, he really tries to put words to it, even though he knows how inadequate they are. He calls it a constant bombardment of something so sweet.
A bombardment of sweetness. I mean, just hold those two words together.
That phrase, right? It gives you the sense that it's aggressive, it's not passive, it's a reality that rushes in once the doors are finally open. He says this sweetness is so overwhelming, he swears he would choose to go through 1,000 lifetimes of suffering to feel just once.
Think about that. The exchange rate on that. 1,000 lifetimes of pain for just one single moment of this awareness.
It tells you everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the sheer unadulterated power of it. It just completely redefines what's valuable.
It does. And that's why the experience, when he describes it, it just ends in this profound, repeated gratitude. Just thank you with all the exclamation points.
And what's key here, we have to hold on to as we go through all of this, is the feeling that this isn't some new discovery.
Right. It's a remembering.
Yes. He says it's remembering something that I had always known. It's his deep recognition of a reality that was there the whole time, just obscured, hidden by all the busy work of the mind.
It's that old story, isn't it? The moment you stopped looking for the glasses you were already wearing.
Exactly.
And here's the trap. This is the essential trap for the ego. The moment you realize what it is, you can't claim it. You can't put it in your pocket.
You can't commodify it.
No. The source warns you right away. It's not a drug. You don't get to feed off it. You don't get it. It gets you.
That line, it gets you. That, for me, is the cornerstone of this entire dive. It makes the distinction absolute. This isn't some spiritual achievement you acquire and, add to your resume. It is a dissolution you suffer. If you think you got it, you've already put the armor back on.
You have. And because this source has no boundaries, any attempt to define it, to contain it with our limited little words, it just feels like you're belittling it.
Yeah.
The narrator in Black Butterfly notes this. He says, any name, Jesus, Allah, Great Spirit, True Self, it's instantly inadequate because it wasn't one of those things. It was everything.
I think the most beautiful and grounding phrase he uses is the simple recognition that everything was at its core my love.
Yeah.
And that just shifts it away from philosophy, doesn't it? It brings it right into a physical, emotional realization. It's this boundless, formless awareness that is fundamentally compassionate.
It is. It's the ultimate truth that you find in, non-dual traditions, but it's stripped of all the dogma. The real you, the super personal reality, is described as open awareness, original isness, boundless, shapeless, formless aliveness.
Formless aliveness, I like that.
It's ever pure, ever free, and ever awake. And if that's the foundation, if that perfection is already there, then the whole effort to achieve it is, well, it's absurd.
And that idea that we are already this aliveness, that's foundational to understanding the awe. The awe isn't about being elevated to something magnificent. It's the awe of being completely, humbly, and perfectly small within it.
It's an undoing.
It is an undoing.
The defining feature is the annihilation of separation. When the experience hit him, the individual couldn't tell where I stopped and IT began. This is the loss of the personal frontier, the loss of the psychological boundary.
It's the metaphor of the infant that really gets me. The infant isn't thinking about its separate identity, is it?
No.
It's just lost in the blur of the silver cord connecting it to its mother. That total lack of boundary, that surrender, that's the core of the awe. The old identity, the one that had completely blocked out the sun, it's gone. And what's left is just this simple, humble gladness to be small.
Because the old anxious I was the thing blocking the light.
Is the obstacle.
What's fascinating here, and this connects to the bigger picture, is the paradox that's revealed in the bubbling spring sources. If this source is always here, if it's always perfect, then what is this whole human drama, all the seeking and suffering? What is it for?
It's the play of forgetting, isn't it? We run as far away as we can, convinced we're separate, and then we spend our entire lives trying to run back home.
This to find out we never left.
Never left.
Exactly. The core realization, and this is where the silence becomes almost deafening, is that the silence was never disturbed. The music was only ever silence playing at being sound.
Wow.
We are both the play and the stage, the actor playing the seeker, and the audience watching the frantic search. They're the same.
We are the eater and the donut.
We are the eater and the donut. The forgetting and the remembering are just two parts of the same existence. It's all one essential, timeless play.
And the terror, I suppose the terror lies. In that moment, you realize the play wasn't actually necessary, that the search and the entire identity you built around that search was all just noise distracting you from the silence.
That realization, that moment, the play is exposed as unnecessary. That is the price of entry. When you see the play for what it is, you suddenly see the inherent folly of the entire human enterprise built on self-improvement.
Right. The sources call this the diploma myth of betterment, this false idea that, spiritual discipline, years of meditation or certain practices will lead you to some perfected version of yourself.
But if you are already perfect, if you are already boundless awareness, why do you need to spend decades trying to get better?
It doesn't make any sense.
That mindset, which is the very foundation of the self-help and spiritual industry, it presupposes a fundamental imperfection. But the sources say we are already endless manifestations of a source whose only drive is to experience itself. The striving, the growth, the discipline, it's all just noise, cleverly orchestrated by the mind to keep the self busy and feeling productive.
And this is where the anti-guru, Krishnamurti, just drops the bomb. He spent years searching, studying, traveling. He dedicated his whole life to achieving enlightenment. And he describes the shock, the absolute shock of realizing there is no self to realize.
Can you imagine the emotional investment? Your entire life, decades of searching, of spiritual practice, and you discover, just like that the fundamental premise was false. There is no self to discover. The self is just a collection of memories and conditioned responses.
He says the realization just hits him. What the hell have I been doing all my life?
That's the shock.
He calls that shock, that realization, the thing that blasts you. The seeker is eliminated by the realization that there was never anything to seek.
And that blast is immediately followed by this scathing critique of what he called the Enlightenment industry. He and others see it as a pyramid scheme of the spirit. It's based on convincing people they are trapped so that freedom, which is already their birthright, can be sold back to them.
It's a cruel feedback loop, isn't it? You can't sell the cure unless you first create the disease of self-doubt.
Yes.
The original sin is not eating the apple. It's believing that something is fundamentally wrong or missing in your nature. Self-development is just anxiety dressed up as productivity. It's the mind's way of keeping its throne, even while pretending to pursue its own dissolution.
And the mind is so clever, so clever. It will happily convince you to go to every guru retreat, download every meditation app, read every self-help book. Because as long as you're doing something, you are preventing the genuine, terrifying end of the self. That movement, that striving, that's the obstruction.
But there's a profound silver lining to utter defeat. The sources suggest it's only when all those systems, the self-help, the prayer, the striving, have completely and utterly failed that true surrender becomes possible.
Yes, and this is where we see the radical, non-traditional kind of help. You think about that story from Black Butterfly about the therapist. She finally admitted defeat to the narrator. She just says, "I've come to the realization that I cannot help you." She saw her tools were inadequate.
And little did she know that admission of defeat was the precise help that he needed. The system failed. The helper failed. And in that vacuum, the identity could finally let go of its control. It was the moment of absolute surrender.
The sources are really stark about who achieves the state. Only those who are shattered and near death. Often you see this in recovery. People who have hit rock bottom and have absolutely nowhere else to turn. Only they can achieve the absolute surrender required to experience the full intensity of unfiltered source energy.
The analogy they use is that those who seek just a little spirituality, they only get a trickle of this energy. They want to remain functional while being holy.
Right. They want to keep their job and their ego intact.
But the torrent, the absolute overwhelming sweetness we were talking about earlier, that requires all the walls of the self to just fall down.
So the key distinction, it's absolute. You are either willing to surrender everything you are to a power you don't yet understand, or you're not. Everything else, all the debate, the theological parsing, the spiritual gossip, it's just the noise of the seeking mind trying to postpone its own execution.
I have to pause on that because it has immense implications for how we live. It sounds like our entire society is actively set up to prevent this, to keep us running.
That's precisely the claim. The narrator of Black Butterfly notes that the entire human endeavor, right from birth, is getting as far from the source as possible. And this running, it's not only advised by our systems, it's actively rewarded. The more you conform, the deeper your roots dig into the soil of comfortable illusions.
And if we stop running, the systems, religious, political, philosophical, they all start to crumble because they're designed for continuity. They're designed to keep us separated from the totality.
They are the architects of the race, and they know the illusions they build have expiration dates.
They know the end is coming for them, too.
They do, because the truth of our boundlessness is fundamentally anarchic to any organized structure. But the deepest reason we run, it's that we are terrified of the silence that is the source. We are terrified of the simple, unconditioned reality.
And the most controversial, most radical claim these sources make is about the history of human guidance itself. U.G. Krishnamurti argues that this chase for an ideal human being, perfected by culture, is the true act of violence.
It's an enormous claim, and we have to report it impartially, just as is presented in the sources. UG states that the most revered figures, the Jesuses and Buddhas, inadvertently created incredible violence in the world, and they did it by placing an impossible, divisive model of the ideal human being before man.
How does the source even defend that? The idea that the pursuit of moral perfection is fundamentally violent.
The violence is in the division it creates. It forces us to measure ourselves against an abstract ideal, a model of selflessness or compassion or detachment that is not our own. It tells you that who you are naturally is insufficient, and you must become like another chap.
So the violence is self-rejection.
It is the violence of self-rejection. That effort to fit into a mold that is not your own is the central falsification of life. And it causes endless conflict, hypocrisy, and self-rejection. It's the constant struggle to improve something that was never broken to begin with.
Okay, so if that self is rejected and the seeking finally stops, we have to talk about the physical price of that transformation, what UG called the calamity. The description of this calamity, it's deeply challenging, especially for listeners who associate transcendence with, peaceful, gentle experiences.
Very challenging.
UG Krishnamurti is adamant this is not mystical. It is a purely neurobiological event, an irreversible change that's accompanied by physical torture.
He's absolutely unyielding on this point. It is the death of the psychological self, yes, but it's experienced entirely by the body. The body has to physically dismantle the structures that maintained that illusion.
So describe that physical shattering. He calls it an explosion. It sounds like a nuclear event, destroying the false integrity of the organism.
That's exactly how he describes it. A nuclear explosion that shatters the whole body. It's an instantaneous whole-body event that leaves behind literal chain reactions in every single cell and nerve.
And the function of that?
The critical function of this physical trauma is that it destroys the illusion of thought continuity. Thought is no longer a seamless river, it's broken up into fragments, and it's in the space between those fragments that the natural state can express itself.
And the body then subsequently goes through a death process every day. That sounds excruciating.
It's described as a recurring, non-voluntary physical event. Each day, the body initiates a process of renewal that feels like dying. This includes chronic cold feet and hands, extreme stiffening of the body, and periods of gasping for breath. It's as if the physical organism is shedding old layers.
So if the self is gone, the body is essentially renewing itself without the mind's input.
Precisely. Yuji posits that this daily death process is necessary for the body's renewal. It gives it a longer lease, and it strips away all the accumulated cultural conditioning. The body's natural state is expressed through this extreme physicality.
If that's the physical reset, what is the immediate psychological consequence? You mentioned the loss of the mental coordinator.
Yes, and this coordinator is the mechanism we rely on constantly. It's the eye or the mind, the psychological mechanism that links all the senses together and gives them a continuous, unified narrative and meaning.
And once it's gone?
Once it's gone, the senses begin their independent careers.
That sounds utterly disorienting, like walking through the world with no filter, no context. How does the body even navigate without that constant interpretation?
It navigates by pure, immediate necessity. The mind goes into what he calls a declutched state. It doesn't continuously narrate or compare. It only engages when practical, functional action is demanded of it.
This is where that famous anecdote comes in, right? The one about the tomato soup?
Yes. Yuji recalls being in a kitchen, looking at a bowl of tomato soup, and literally forgetting what it was. He had no conceptual recognition. His memory wasn't gone, but it was declutched.
So he only recognized the soup.
In the moment of tasting. Then he would swallow, and the recognition would vanish instantly, until the next moment of necessity. When the mind is not needed, there is no mind. There is only life acting. The memory, the knowledge, it's all in the background, like a filing cabinet that only opens when you manually pull the drawer.
And this declutched state, it also leads to incredible, almost painful physical sensitivity. The body is no longer armored by the defensive self.
The physical armor is gone. The armor we use to buffer ourselves from the environment, the opinions of others, the stress, the constant sensory input, it's destroyed.
Yeah.
The organism becomes highly vulnerable and affected by everything.
He noted his skin became soft as silk, didn't he?
As silk, and it had a peculiar golden glow. His sense of touch was so radically changed that a razor would slip when he shaved because his skin actually resisted the blade.
That golden glow and the silk skin. It suggests a profound physical transformation, an unburdening of tension. But there are even stranger physical accounts, aren't there? The one about the moon phases.
Yes, and this is where we really touch on the absolute unarmored connection to environmental forces. Yuji described how physical swellings on his body would take on the shape of a cobra during specific moon phases.
Wow.
It's a literal manifestation of the body's reaction to cosmic cycles, completely unfiltered by any mental conditioning. It indicates a state where the organism is completely open, vulnerable, and responsive to every subtle change in its environment.
That level of vulnerability. It sounds terrifying on one hand, but on the other, maybe incredibly intimate with the universe. If the controlling self is gone, who or what is left running the show?
The body itself. The sources insist that the body has an extraordinary, tremendous intelligence, and it's interested only in its protection and its survival.
So it doesn't need external moral systems or spiritual guides.
Or philosophical problems. It knows how to breathe. It knows how to digest. It knows how to survive.
So the body knows what to do. The mind is primarily the interference, the noise that keeps superimposing rules onto a perfectly functioning system.
Exactly. Life without the superimposed how to live is simple. The complexity of human existence is self-created, driven by concepts. The true measure of consciousness, Yuji argues, is the simple physical response to stimuli, untainted by interpretation.
Can you give another example of that simple, unfettered function?
The classic example is breathtaking beauty. When you see something truly magnificent, a sunset, a mountain range, a child laughing, your breath is naturally drawn out. Sometimes you hold it, then you draw it back in.
Right.
That pause, that involuntary physical response, that is the true unfettered function of the nervous system. The body reacts instantly and perfectly. It's the mind that jumps in a split second later and turns the raw sensation into a judgment. This is beautiful, or I must photograph this, or I wish I could feel this way forever.
The natural intelligence of the organism is consciousness, without the self-referential commentary.
That is the natural state.
Yeah.
And once that physical reset is complete, the central mechanism of suffering thought is fundamentally rearranged. The sources, particularly thought is your enemy, argue that once the calamity or this irreversible change occurs, thought is exposed for what it truly is, the enemy.
They call thought fascist, don't they? Controlling and shaping action, capable only of creating problems, not solving them. That's a strong indictment of our defining human faculty.
It is. Thought, as we experience it, is fundamentally controlling. It attempts to shape every single moment based on memory, fear, and future projections. We have to be absolutely clear here. The goal is not a thoughtless state. Thought is necessary for practical survival. Right.
The problem is the continuous self-referential thought, the internal monologue that is choking the system and demanding continuity of the I.
So how does that monologue end? The crucial realization seems to be the ending of the questions.
Yes, because the questions aren't genuine inquiries. They are just mechanical repetitions springing from memory, and they only serve to maintain the knowledge structure of the self. As the source says, all the questions are born out of the answers we already have.
We just ask questions to reaffirm what we already think we know.
Exactly.
So if the question disappears, the questioner, the self that demands to know, disappears right along with it. That's the ultimate simplicity then. To stop asking how or why.
It is the ultimate letting go. The ultimate state is one of not knowing. When someone in this natural state looks at something, they truly don't know what they are looking at in a conceptual sense. But it doesn't matter. The body reacts appropriately, the senses take in the information, but the meaning-making machine is silent.
The only genuine practical function of thought that's left is when there's a simple demand for practical action.
Exactly. If you need to know, how do I go to Hyderabad, the mind accesses the data and provides the instructions. But the moment that demand is satisfied, the conceptual apparatus just shuts down. There is no lingering worry about having forgotten the car keys or what the person in Hyderabad will think of you, just functional quiet.
And this quiet, this leads directly back to that feeling of boundlessness we talked about at the beginning. The separation dissolves because the thing that creates the boundaries thought is finished.
The you is nothing other than the continuity of thought. That movement of memory, of comparison, of fear, that is what creates the frontiers. When that movement ceases, the separation ceases. You are no longer living in a bounded organism called me that has to interact with separate things called not me.
This radically redefines human connection then. We often talk about love and relationship as core spiritual goals, but these sources just tear that apart too.
They do. In the natural state, affection isn't a projected emotion. It's not a sentimental idea you try to generate. It is the physical state of being affected by everything. If there are no others separate from the self in consciousness, then there is no separation.
That is the source of pure compassion, isn't it? If someone else is hurt, that hurt is felt here. Not as a emotional pain or sympathy, but as pure physical responsiveness because the boundary is gone.
Yes. Our conventional search for love through relationships is constantly failing because it is born out of separation. We use relationships and ideas to fill the internal void caused by isolation. We desperately want to make them into loving affairs.
But because those affairs are born out of a desperate need for continuity and permanent happiness, demands that life cannot possibly meet, they are always, as the source says, a battle, a war.
It's a war waged by two separate selves trying to merge while still retaining control. And this is why the search for meaning is absurd. We're not fundamentally interested in life itself, but in the difficulty of living with the false value system our culture has imposed on us. That system demands we be separate, perfected, and perpetually in conflict.
And the only way out of the war is to realize you are not the warrior.
So after diving into all these radical, uncompromising sources, the essential contradiction we're left with is profound. You are unique, and everything you are is inherently the source, but the sustained, lifelong effort to be like another chap, to achieve some perfected, idealized model, is precisely what prevents that natural state from expressing itself.
The spiritual path is the obstacle. The constant striving is the wall.
In absolute terms, yes. Enlightenment is simply the cessation of wanting to be enlightened. It's the dropping of the entire self-improvement project because you realize you are already perfect, just obscured by your own efforts.
And this is where the rubber meets the road. Because this knowledge has to be integrated without turning it into a new discipline, a new, I must stop seeking.
Which is just another form of seeking.
Exactly. If you are not it and you are in its way, then the only path forward is to see the complete, total absurdity of the current setup.
And that involves facing the core of the problem, the ego, the false self, which is described in the sources as the one false, petty, fearful, dishonest thing in the universe. The sources suggest that anyone who truly knows the ego will come to be utterly repulsed by it. That revulsion is the beginning of movement toward the natural state.
But the terror of the ego being unmade is immense. The instruction is deceptively simple. We must stand still and let things happen.
That sounds easy on a retreat, Christian, doesn't it? But you think about the world we live in, a world built entirely on fear, denial, and distraction. We're taught that the necessities of life are food, water, shelter, clothing, denial, and distraction.
So standing still in this chaotic environment without turning stillness into yet another mantra or discipline, it feels impossible. It does. The ultimate question these sources pose, and the one we have to leave you with, is this. If the search is guaranteed to fail, and the effort to improve is the problem, is the ability to simply own your insanity, the absurdity of the self, the fear, the relentless seeking, is that the only freedom left? Can you just accept the unarmored vulnerability of the body without trying to spin it into some heroic quest?
If the body has its own tremendous intelligence, maybe the most radical act available to you right now is to cease interpretation, to stop trying to organize the chaos, and to find the deep, terrifying gladness in simply being small.
What happens when you realize the person who was supposed to figure out life never existed? And can you let the silence speak for itself?